It's me. Hi. I'm the problem. It's me. It's me. Hi. It's just me today, friends. Today's a solo episode of the Sobriety Diaries, which I don't do that often, but I've been feeling a lot more these days. I feel like I've got a lot to say. I feel like I want to share it with all of you. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea, grab your morning coffee. It's just me and you, friend. Let's open the diary on queer recovery on the Sobriety Diaries. Happy Sober Day, friends. Welcome to the Sobriety Diaries. My name is Nate. I am a grateful recovering alcoholic 7 years from my last drink. The Sobriety Diaries is a video podcast where we share powerful stories of recovery told by those who lived them. Check us out at thesobrietydiaries.com for all things podcast related. And for all our video interviews, head over to youtube.com/Nate Kelly. Also, please share this podcast with just one person in your life who may still be struggling. You just never know what they may need to hear today. Recovery is possible. So I feel like I talk a lot on other podcasts and, sprinkle it in during my interviews regarding recovery in the queer community and how, I like to lend my voice to both the online recovery community and the queer recovery community. I feel like I don't often dive deeper into recovery in the queer community, addiction in the queer community, the horrible, astronomical suicide rates attributed to addiction. And these are all topics that I am passionate about and want to share with you in hopes of garnering more attention, in hopes of opening that dialogue and starting the conversation with others. So that's what we're going to do today. And I want to start with a quote that sort of encapsulates my thoughts on this topic as well. The quote comes from B.D. Lyons, who is a well respected author and advocate in the LGBTQ community. He has written many articles and is published hundreds and hundreds of times. And BD says it is well documented and confirmed that our queer brothers and sisters experience substance misuse issues at a higher rate than our cis hetero counterparts. It is an epidemic with no vaccine. And I think in today's society, with the heightened awareness of an epidemic or a pandemic and sort of the vast effect that it can have worldwide and how vaccines can counteract that, I think it perfectly speaks to most of what I want to touch on today. So, for many years, I didn't know the significance of the trauma that I had experienced in my life. And I oftentimes said, I had a great childhood. There was no trauma. And, I started drinking socially and, it snowballed from there and yada, yada, yada. And I stand by that. I had a great childhood, but I definitely had trauma, and traumas come in different shapes and sizes and circumstances. And, especially being a part of the queer community, I think there are societal traumas that we don't even realize that we have been exposed to, or that even are traumas in our mind or the minds of others. So, one key area of new knowledge and of analytics and statistics about addiction in the queer community definitely relates to trauma. And like I said, trauma is varying severity and in different shapes and sizes. It can be family, it can be work related, society related, but it's really the unexpected occurrence or set of occurrences that threatens stability, safety, and wellness. Our responses to trauma are also varied based on the experience itself, can warrant the severity of reaction to the trauma. And like I said, those of us in the queer community, especially those of us who were closeted at an early age, we internalize so much that for me, at least, it began to develop this hatred of myself and this internalized homophobia, which again, I don't think is really discussed. And that can be so detrimental to our psyche. And it certainly was for me. I think also it's often the case that young queer individuals filter our perceptions of reality and what is happening around us through the lens of other people and through the lens of cis hetero individuals who may be experiencing the same events in the same circumstances, but are not experiencing the same results, whether that's acceptance, validation, sometimes simply conversation. The results that we experience internally are much different. And certainly, let me just preface or put this out there that trauma is not the only contributing factor to addiction or substance use in the queer community. Addictive substances and behaviors are they don't discriminate, right? But from those I've talked to and the research that I've done, that pain and that shame that we are forced to cope with at such a young age seems to be a common experience and seems to be a contributing factor to gay men, lesbian women, bisexuals, transgender individuals, intersex individuals, and all of us in the queer community. So, in the years prior to the gay rights movement or this gay liberation movement, prior to that, it was illegal for queer individuals to assemble or be openly gay or take part in gay activity. And by that, I don't mean anything sexual or over the top. I'm talking holding hands, conversing with another gay individual in most cases. But there were severe restrictions in most cities and in most establishments, other than a few small bars or drinking establishments. So, there were very limited public places that gay individuals could gather. And with this, a gay bar or a queer bar culture emerged. This underground culture started to take shape and really rising just out of fear of being in unsafe surroundings or unaccepting surroundings. Gay individuals seem to flock to these places in which they knew that they could be safe and be themselves. And like I said, most times it revolved around drinking. Now, I don't want to get too historical or go into the history of, sort of this gay uprising and liberation movement. I think we've all heard the basics, but with the creation of these safe spaces also came violence from outsiders. So it just created this additional layer of trauma and this additional circumstance or fear, really, that individuals began to internalize and thus use substances to help mute or to deal with, frankly. And all of this to say or to highlight the fact that there is this common perception or a misconception of the queer culture always being tied to drugs and alcohol. And, for lack of a better term or lack of a better description, using these substances on a regular basis really just to be okay with ourselves or to get through life, of course, is going to lead to misuse. Of course, it's going to lead to alcohol or drug use disorder, alcoholism, however you describe it, whatever makes sense to you. And really, since the time that queer individuals felt safe enough to publicly say just that they are a queer individual, drugs and alcohol have always been tied to it. Cut to now, where we actually have statistics that we can look at and see this progression over the last 4 decades. It's just mind boggling and so sad. So, just for conversation's sake, let's look at a couple of these statistics. Okay, so substance use and misuse. Data from the 2018 National Survey on Drug Use and Health suggests that substance use patterns reported by individuals who consider themselves to be gay, lesbian, or bisexual are innately higher compared to those reported by heterosexual adults. More than a third, so 37.6% of these queer individuals, adults 18 and older, reported in the last year to feeling out of control with their marijuana use compared to 16.2% of the overall adult population. Also, in this survey, those same individuals who felt that their opioid use was out of control was 9% compared to the 3.8% of the overall adult population. And then, of course, alcohol, that we have 12.4 of queer individuals felt that their alcohol use was out of control compared to 10.1 of the adult population over 18. Now, if we couple that with mental health disorders and mental health issues or comorbidities, the numbers just skyrocket. And those numbers that I just read may not seem that crazy to you, but if we think about it from a perspective, the majority, or at least half of these individuals, are still in the closet or leading a secret life. And as I said earlier, internalizing the majority of this pain and this trauma. Oftentimes it leads to some of these next statistics, which are just devastating. The Trevor Project reports that suicide is the second leading cause of death among young queer individuals, and the LGBTQ youth are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide than their cis hetero peers. They also estimate that more than 1.8 million queer youth between the ages of 13 and 24 seriously consider suicide each year in the US, and over 75% of these same individuals admit to a substance use disorder. That makes my skin crawl and gets me emotional. And I don't want this episode to be all statistics and analytics or impersonal, but I wanted to start with that so that we understand sort of what we're talking about. Now, I can certainly relate my own story to all of this. And, I was very much a closeted small town kid who, I was coming into myself and realizing that I was gay in the late 80s, early 90s. And there were no depictions or positive examples of gay culture or gay lifestyle in the media.